Hey everyone, it is Reverend Dr. Katie. Hope you're doing okay. It's Friday afternoon. It is March 15th, 2019, and it's an interesting day to be posting this. And one of the reasons I'm really coming on right now is because we are dealing with the mass mosque shootings in New Zealand. And it's so troubling, it's so devastating as human beings. It's hard to even wrap our minds around this. Hope you saw, I posted everywhere and on my social media earlier that I'm a Christian and that I'm calling on Christians to pray for this situation. And as you know, I'm interfaith minded, and I believe that Jesus was interfaith minded. So that is part of our calling as Christian, to be aware of that and to deal with it, to deal lovingly with, not deal with, but to act lovingly towards others, towards our interfaith brothers and sisters and all of our siblings. So I have been absent a little bit this week because energy has been a little just up and down all week long, and today included. I haven't slept at all week long. If you haven't slept either, let me know, raise your hand, because energy has just been so high. Mercury retrograde is going on. As Christians, we are in the middle of Lent, this season of inward reflection, and that's certainly been on my mind as well. And then today, all of these mass shootings have been really devastating. So a little bit of word of hope. As Christians, we are called to hold hope. If you find that difficult today, don't worry. There are people who are holding hope for you. So know that there are others who are praying if you don't have the words. And we have to kind of manage our own energy in order to be able to be present with others, in order to be able to pray, in order to hold that really, really high vibration space. One of the things that I love helping people do is being able to hold that high vibration space in their own lives, in their own personal prayer lives, in their spiritual lives, so that when these devastating things happen, they happen, and we can actually respond from a very high energy, high vibration state. And that's what I am doing today, and what the people who I work with one-on-one, what they are doing too. And when we learn to manage our own energy, we can do these really quick checks. We can tune into that, and then we can act and be most effective. So let me ask you, if when something like what has happened in New Zealand, if when that happens, do you feel kind of frozen? Do you feel like you don't have a way to respond? Do you feel like no matter what you do, it's not going to make a difference? That's a really, really common reaction. We kind of go into feeling numb. What happens when we feel numb is not actually that you're feeling numb. When you are feeling numb, it's because you're feeling so many emotions at once that they all collide, and that results in you feeling numb. When you feel numb, you probably feel powerless, and you probably feel like there's nothing much that you can do, and like your spiritual life is a little bit in chaos. If I can get an amen to that, let me know. I've been there. I've been there so many times. And now, as this metaphysical Christian, as a pastor, I am called to hold a really different kind of space. And you are probably called to hold a different kind of space too. One where you are managing your own personal energy so that you can be most effective to the world around you. And I do that in a bunch of different ways. I do that through personal meditation, through prayer, through chakra, but mostly just by being tuned into source all the time, to God all the time. And I believe that as a Christian, it's my Christian calling to actually hold this space for other people and to help them manage this too. So the word of hope and the tragedy in New Zealand is that you're here, you're listening to this, you are a Christian, you are called to justice, and figuring out the ways that you're called to justice and to enact that justice and enact that peace in your everyday life is one of the things that I'm here to help you do. And I actually think that's the number one way that we're called to make a difference. We're called to do this in our personal vibration space. And then when we do that, it affects all these other people's vibrational space too. And it sounds small, but it's not small. It's huge. That's your whole energetic sphere. When you change your whole energetic sphere, you change the people around you, and they change the people around them. And this catches on. This is actually really important. I think it's the most important thing we can do. So have you ever met those people who are huge change makers, but they're like personally a frenzy, and you feel so nervous after being around them that you don't want to be around them anymore? think how much more effective they would be if they had their own personal energy under control. And that's one of the things that we can do as Christians. And Jesus called disciples who were ordinary people. And just like we are ordinary people too. And we're called to make this energetic difference in the world. So, hey, I see some people are joining on. Thank you, Betty. Thank you so much. Yes. And Betty's very wise and has her own personal energy like down. So give us some more insights. And Betty's actually one of the very first enrollees and graduates in the Transformation Awakening program. Has a beautiful, beautiful energy. I know we had a couple of questions before, so I'm going to hop over to another screen and just check and see what those are. And I invite you, we're going to conclude in a few minutes with a little bit of prayer and a little bit of meditation for the situation in New Zealand. And I've had a lot of Muslim brothers and sisters reaching out to me on Instagram, which has been really just beautiful to be able to be in prayerful solidarity with them. And actually, I will tell you a story in just a few minutes about a beautiful interfaith experience that I had where spirit transcended any kind of religious affiliation that we may have had. I'm just hopping over so I can see the questions. Here we go. Okay, so someone wrote in and said, everyone is so prickly and defensive and emotional right now. Yeah, that's just kind of the state of the world, isn't it? Prayers. In a way, it seems like buried issues are being given voice. And in another way, it's just a venting of feelings. I want to stick to my healthy boundaries, but support and be flexible with all of us who seem easily triggered right now. Any help, any hints on how to do that in a healthy way? So let me speak first to the everyone feeling prickly and defensive and emotional. This is part of the cycle of trauma. And I've been actually learning a lot about this. I live in Chico, California, and that we're very near where the Camp Fire happened. And right in the middle, like at the zenith of a tragedy or a trauma is when people band together. And that's when you see like slogans coming forward. I've already seen them for New Zealand. People have already started making hashtags and slogans about New Zealand. That's a really important part of community cohesion. And I think this happens at like it'll happen in your local community. It happens at national levels and at international levels as well. And then right after that, it kind of plummets. Sorry, let me go down here. It kind of plummets and people get prickly. They feel like their resources are being held up. They feel a little bit hopeless. They start to feel like nothing will ever make a difference. And even though this New Zealand tragedy just happened, if people are experiencing past trauma that gets re-triggered with something like the New Zealand shootings, then they may enter into that phase really, really quickly. This is where cultivating your personal energy is so important, because when other people are like flipping out, when other people don't see the hope, you are called to hold that space for them and with them. So I've certainly seen that here and where I live around Chico, because people are like now annoyed because traffic is a lot worse. Our town is a lot more crowded. Everyone feels empathy still, but it comes out in weird ways and people get really aggressive. Like there's a lot of road rage right now here where I live. There's a lot of people just being a little bit short-tempered, whereas a few months ago, everyone was bending over backwards to be helpful to each other. I think this happens when any kind of major energy shift is going on. And there's a ton of energy shifts going on right now, just cosmically. There's a ton going on right at this moment in time. And so cultivating the best time to prepare for this is actually before it happens. The best time to prepare for any kind of disaster is before the disaster happens, so that you, when it does happen, you are sitting there with all your tools in place, ready to hold a really high vibrational space when other people just can't do it. So I'm going to be just really kind of crass for a minute. When other people are losing their shit, you're holding the high vibrational space for that, and it's not actually affecting you at that deep of a level. So that's where we want to get to. We want to get to a high vibrational space, not ignoring all the crazy stuff that's happening out there in the world, but holding a high space, a really high prayerful, high vibration space, so that all of that doesn't interfere with our deep connection to God, with our deep abiding faith, and where we can help others experience whatever they need to experience and then raise up. We're all in this together to raise up to the highest ascensions that we can. And I know that when we do that, we won't have people who have to fulfill these strange, violent acts like we see in New Zealand. So if we're all in this together, holding this really high vibrational space, those acts won't happen at such a high rate. That's part of what we are all about. Now, you can't go from 0 to 100. You just can't. This can happen quickly. Your ascension can happen really quickly. Your high vibration can happen quickly, but you have to learn and have the tools in order to be able to do that. So if you are watching this and you feel like that's something that's like just out of reach in your life, or something that you are desiring to aspire to, this is the time to reach out and let me know. This is something we can work on now before you get in a state where you're in a panic and when you're in a crisis. So we want to avoid that crisis mode and shift into high vibration now, learn those tools now, so that we can kind of accomplish all of this together. We're all in this together. Okay, so the second part of that question was any hints to do that in healthy ways? Yeah, so the time to start is now. So start that preparation now. Meditation and prayer and cultivating all your metaphysical tools and all your awarenesses is definitely the way to go. That's the best preparation I have. There's no shortcuts in the time of crisis other than to reach out to me or another healer and get the help you need right then. But I would much rather you start now, way before that happens, so that we can get to that state. So how does all this, okay, so I'm here in the United States. How does cultivating our personal energy here and now actually help in New Zealand? We are Christians. We believe in the power of prayer. We believe that we are all interconnected. We believe that we are all God's children. Anything we do that helps the physical space that we inhabit here and now helps the world. It helps the universe, and it helps the planes and dimensions that we can't even see. So everything that we do is interconnected and helps everything else. And that is the part of faith that I love so much. Those are things that we can't see, but we know are being affected. When you get the opportunity to see your prayers being effective in other people's lives, that's the gift. The bit of faith is knowing that we don't always get to see it, but it's happening anyway. And we know that when we are really tuned in, because you're all empathic anyhow. And so you will be able to sense that at a higher level once you kind of cultivate all of those tools and all of those skills. So the story I want to tell you about my interfaith experience, and this was super, super metaphysical. Sorry, I'm in my living room because every time I'm in my office, the video skips. Now I'm highly uncomfortable. So I'm getting a little more comfortable. I also got sick this morning. So I'm doing this on a little bit of essential oils and medicines today. So the story I want to tell you, about 9 years ago, in 2010, I was in Turkey, and I was with a group of church women. We were doing interfaith and ecumenical work together. So I've been interfaith minded for a really long time. We are in Ephesus, and we'd seen the ruins of Ephesus. Gorgeous, gorgeous. Go if you ever have the opportunity. And that afternoon, we were going up to see what they call Mary's house. And so the story is that Mary, the mother of Jesus, after Jesus' death and resurrection, you remember in the Gospel of John that Jesus says on the cross to Mary, "This is your son," and he says to John, "This is your mother." And so the stories after the New Testament are that John took her to Ephesus when he went there as a missionary to care for her, and that she lived and died on a hillside mountain right outside of Ephesus. This is kind of like Christian legend / apocrypha, one of the fancy words that we use, and scholars haven't given it a lot of historical credence. The long story short is that there was a German nun in the 1800s, I forget exactly which. Her last name was Emmerich. And she had visions of Mary living in Ephesus. She was bedridden, so she described her visions and her dreams down, and adventurers took her descriptions and went to Ephesus, and they actually found the ruins of this place in Ephesus that started to be called Mary's house. And it turns out that the local people would go every August on a particular day in August. It's either the 15th or the 19th, and now my memory is escaping me. But they would go and they would hold dedications to Mary, but they didn't know why. So exactly why had been lost. Well, it turns out that the local people were doing that on the feast day of the Assumption of Mary. And so I'm a Protestant woman going up with all these other Protestant women to go see Mary's house. Mary doesn't have such a prominence in Protestant circles, so it's not quite such an active devotion actually for Protestants, but I went to Catholic school growing up, so I felt something really special about this the whole ride up the mountain. And our tour guide was telling us these stories that I just told you about Mary and Mary's house with a little bit of an edge. Like, she was not so much a believer in these stories. This story is not actually about believing in the literalness of it. It's about believing in the energy of this particular place. And we get to Mary's house. It's now run by the Franciscans, a lovely group of people. And the original house, whatever the original first century building that was there is not there anymore. And they actually carbon dated the stone foundations or the foundations, and it does date to the first century. And you can't carbon date stone, but they tested it. Oh, my phone is ringing over there. I forgot to turn it on silent. Well, I'll just keep on going. So we get to Mary's house, and it's now a chapel. And it is one of the only places in the world where Muslims and Christians worship side by side together. Mary is very important in Islam, and there are stories about her. And in fact, it's the only book in the Quran, or the only surah in the Quran, that is named after a woman is named after Mary. So on the left were Muslims, on the right were Christians, and we all prayed side by side. We are worshiping the same God. We do it in different ways. We do it different stories with different traditions, but we're worshiping the same God. And this was one of the most beautiful interfaith experiences I ever had. And it didn't require me to understand the Islamic faith. It didn't require the Muslims who were there to understand the Christian faith. It required us to sit side by side in solidarity and in prayer. Prayer united us metaphysically in ways that no amount of discussion or panels or inquiries ever could. So actually, when we ground ourselves in prayer at a metaphysical level, when we ground ourselves in this interfaith understanding of being siblings together, worshiping the God who loves us all so tremendously, that's how we actually become united. So cultivating your personal, physical prayer life, your metaphysical prayer life, your metaphysical life, your soul, your aura, your chakras, all of that, it makes a difference. And I don't say it makes a difference just for your personal satisfaction, although I think that's really important too. I say it because I think it makes a difference to the world. I think when we all do this, we are making ourselves better, and we're making the world a better place. And I can't describe how important that is to me, and how deep I feel that sense of calling, and how much I love seeing people thrive and find how their unique Christian calling comes alive in the world. I've seen so many people shift from a place of anxiety and not knowing what foot was going to be put forward next, to sitting in this place of peacefulness and trust and deep surrender to spirit. And when we surrender to spirit, we find more freedom and more choices. And we find out that God has joy in store for us. And that's so tremendously important. And I want every single one of you to feel that and to understand that and to know that deep down in your bones. And that's why I offer all these opportunities to be able to cultivate your personal space, because I know when you cultivate your personal space, you are cultivating space for the entire world and for realms that you can't even see or know about. And I believe that very, very deep down. And so it all begins with, it begins with you and here. I could give you all the books to read in the world. I could give you all the websites to read in the world. I could give you all of that. Until you embrace this in your own life and do these practices and put them into your body. None of those are that important. So that's why I value the community experience that we have. I value working with you interpersonally so that we can do this together. I've worked with people over the years. You don't get to become a minister without having to do a lot of interpersonal work and having a lot of mentors and a lot of groups. And now this is one of the things that I provide for you guys. All right, I've been going on for about 20 minutes, so I am going to bring this to a close. When you are ready to be able to cultivate your personal space and your personal life in a way that you know will make a difference to the world out there, reach out to me, private message me. That's what I'm here for. I will be with you all a little bit more on and off this weekend and into next week, now that I've had my own week of sleeplessness and of kind of waking up today to being able to be here with all of you. So that's what we're all about. So I'd love to hear from all of you, and I will talk to you soon. See you soon. Bye-bye.